The offer in the dust, the desert wind howled across the cracked surface of planet Therix 9, kicking dust into the dry air. It was a quiet, forgotten world, one where broken people went to disappear. In this silence walked a human man named Jace. His boots crushed the dirt beneath him as he returned to his small cargo shelter at the edge of the outpost. Jace had come to Therix 9 for one reason: peace. After losing everything back on Earth in the border wars, he wanted no part in politics, war, or people. He traded scrap, hunted desert creatures, and lived alone, and he liked it that way. Until today. As he reached the edge of the hill where his shelter stood, he saw something unusual: movement near the rocks. He slowed down, hand instinctively moving to the pistol on his belt. But then he saw them clearly. Woman. No, an alien woman. Tall, thin, her skin a light silver blue. Dust clung to her tattered cloak. Behind her, two small children, clearly hers, stood close together, holding hands. They looked weak, starving. The woman stepped forward and raised both hands in surrender. "Please," she said in shaky but clear English. "I do not wish to steal, I do not wish to beg, but I must ask." Jace didn't move. His eyes scanned them. No weapons, no signs of a trap. But trust didn't come easy to him anymore. "What do you want?" he asked flatly. The woman lowered her eyes. "I can cook, clean, I can stay quiet. My children are well behaved. I can be a good wife to you, if you take us in." Jace blinked. He had heard many things in his time as a soldier and trader. But this was new. "I'm not looking for a wife," he said coldly. She nodded, expecting rejection. "I understand, but my children, they will not survive another night in the cold. We have no food, no place. I offer myself not for love, but for mercy." The two small children looked up at him, wide-eyed, hollow faces, dirt on their cheeks, not a single tear, not a single sound. "Where's their father?" Jace asked. "Dead," she replied simply. "Years ago, I was sold to a labor camp. We escaped. But there is nowhere to go now." Jace exhaled slowly. He looked back at the setting suns. The temperature would drop below freezing soon. If he left them outside, they would die by morning. He knew it, and still, his mind screamed, "Stay out of it. Don't get involved." But something in him cracked, an old piece of his soul that still remembered compassion. "Just for one night," he said finally. "I have a heater and food." The woman's eyes welled up instantly. She didn't speak, only gave a small, trembling nod. The children didn't move until she gently guided them forward. Inside, his shelter was small, barely enough space for him, but he made room. He laid out blankets, gave the kids water, opened a pack of protein bars and handed them to the woman. She didn't eat until her children finished first. Jace watched her carefully. She moved with care, with respect. She didn't ask for more, didn't touch anything without permission. She didn't even sit until he nodded. "What's your name?" he asked. The woman hesitated. "Lyra," she said softly. "And the kids?" "Jolly and Rune." He looked at them. The boy was younger, maybe 5 human years. The girl slightly older. Both were thin, silent, but calm. Too calm, like they had seen too much already. "You don't have to be my wife," Jace muttered. "I'm not that kind of man." Lyra looked at him. "I didn't think you were, but I had to offer. Some would not help otherwise." Silence filled the room again. Outside, the wind screamed like a lost soul. But inside, there was a strange warmth, one that Jace hadn't felt in years. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake, listening. Lyra didn't rest either. She sat cross-legged near, her children eyes open watching them. At one point, Jace saw her lean down and kiss both their heads, then she whispered something he couldn't fully hear. This time, maybe, safe. Jace turned to the wall and closed his eyes. But deep inside, he already knew. This wasn't going to be just one night. The hidden bruises. Jace woke up just after dawn, though he hadn't really slept. The desert night had passed quietly, but not peacefully. He kept turning in his small cot, hearing every soft breath, every quiet shift from the corner of the shelter where the alien woman and her children rested. Now, sunlight slipped through the cracks in the metal walls. A faint glow touched Lyra's silver-blue skin as she sat with her knees tucked under her, eyes still open. She hadn't slept either, the two children huddled beside her, finally resting. "You didn't close your eyes once," Jace said, sitting up slowly. Lyra didn't look at him. "Habit," she replied simply. "In the camps you sleep and you lose something." Jace walked over to the makeshift kitchen unit and poured some hot water into a cup. The recycled air carried the weak smell of herbs he had added, just enough to warm the chest. He offered it to her. Lyra hesitated, then accepted it with both hands, bowing her head slightly. "Thank you." The kid stirred. Little Rune coughed, softly, a dry sound that pulled a frown from Jace. No child should cough like that. Jolly pulled the blanket tighter around him and nudged her little brother gently. Lyra reached out and rested her hand on their heads. Her touch was soft, but there was something trembling behind her calm expression. "I've got some dried meat and synth grain," Jace said. "It's not much." Lyra stood slowly. "I will prepare it. Please allow me." "You don't have to." "I must," she said firmly but not rudely. "Please." He watched her limp slightly as she moved toward the small cooking unit. The limp was faint, hidden under her long robe, but Jace's eyes were trained to catch things like that. Soldier eyes, survivor eyes. She knelt to cook, sleeves rolled up, and that's when he saw them. Faint but deep scars running along the side of her arm. Not from accidents, not from war. From a whip. Sharp. Precise. Repeated. He said nothing. She moved like someone trained to not waste a second, stirring the grains, adding the powder, breaking the meat into pieces with care. But her body, it told another story. After breakfast, the children sat quietly by the corner, drawing shapes into the dirt floor with their fingers. Jace stepped outside for a moment to check the solar panels, something to clear his head. But outside, a voice greeted him. "You've got new guests," said a deep voice. Jace turned. A tall, bearded man stood a few feet away. It was Darren, the local trader. Smelled like oil and spice. He always talked too much. Always knew too much. "Yeah, just some travelers," Jace muttered. Darren smirked. "That so?" Word spreading fast. Bounty alert came in last night. Woman escaped from the Glavik slave mines. She took 2 brats with her. Dead price if they're caught. Alive gets more. Jace's body tensed. "You think I'd be stupid enough to take in fugitives?" Darren laughed, slapping his own leg. "Just making conversation, friend. Besides, I know you. You don't like people." "Exactly," Jace replied, cold. "So why are you still here?" Darren raised his hands and backed off. All right. Just saying. If you do see anyone like that, don't be a hero. The bounty hunters won't ask questions." He left whistling. Jace stood still, eyes narrowed. Inside, Lyra hadn't heard the conversation, but when he stepped back in, she looked up. Her sharp alien eyes read him like a book. "They know," he said quietly. She didn't react, just nodded once and pulled her children closer. "I didn't tell them, but I need to know the truth." Lyra exhaled slowly. Her voice came out like a whisper, dry from pain and memory. "I was property," she said. "Born into the slave lines. Given to a Glavik noble. When he died, I was passed down like furniture. The mines were worse. The kids were born there. I escaped when the guards fought among themselves over food. No one saw us leave." "And now?" Jace asked. "They'll find us eventually. They always do." He looked at her again. The bruises, the fear behind her eyes. but also the strength it took to stay awake all night, to cook breakfast, to keep her children alive in this hell. "You should have let me die in the cold," she said quietly, avoiding his gaze. "It would have been easier for you." "No," Jace replied. Lyra looked up, surprised. "I don't do easy anymore." The two stared at each other. For a moment there was no fear, just understanding. He reached for his tools. "I'm going to bury the shelter's heat signature," he said. "If someone comes scanning, they won't find us. And tonight, we move to the caves." Lyra didn't respond with words, but her eyes, glassy, glowing faintly, said everything. Hope had entered her heart again. The hunter and the stranger 3 days passed. The sun on Therix 9 burned harder each day, but Jace's shelter was now empty. He had moved them to an abandoned cave network hidden behind a ridge of broken stone and sand dunes. The entrance was narrow, but once inside it opened into wide chambers, cool, dark, quiet, perfect for hiding. Lyra and the children adjusted fast. Rune had more energy now, laughing for the first time when Jace accidentally spilled water on himself. Jaylee, though quiet, had started sitting beside Jace in the evenings, watching him clean his tools. Even Lyra smiled once, a small, tired smile, but real. But peace never lasts long on desert worlds. It was evening when Jace heard the engine, a low, sharp growl in the sky. He didn't move. He crouched near the cave entrance, hand on his scope, scanning the sky through a narrow crack. A black hoverbike, fast, military grade. Dust sprayed behind it like a tail of smoke. Not local, not friendly. Jace tracked it until it landed near the old outpost right where his shelter used to be. The rider stepped off, tall, armor black as night, masked face, green visor. He moved like a predator, slow, controlled, confident. A bounty hunter. Jace cursed under his breath. Back in the cave, Lyra froze when he returned. "He's here," Jace said. "Not Darren, a real tracker." Her eyes widened, panic flickering, but she swallowed it down fast. "I knew they'd come. They haven't found the trail yet. But he's scanning. Slow, careful. He's not rushing, he's hunting." She grabbed her children quickly, hugging them close. "Listen," Jace said, kneeling down to her level. "You said you escaped through chaos. Fighting, right? Who would want you back so badly they'd hire someone like that?" Lyra hesitated. "There's something I didn't tell you," she whispered. "I wasn't just a minor. I was a bonded wife to a Glavic elder. Forced, yes, but legally bonded in their eyes. When he died, I inherited his codes. I didn't want them. I ran. But those codes, they can open vaults." "What kind of vaults?" "Weapons, credits, locations of other slaves in hiding." Jay stared at her. "You're not just an escaped mother, you're a key." She nodded slowly. "And they want me back before someone like you finds out." Jay sat back, running a hand through his hair. This wasn't a simple rescue anymore. This was a galaxy-level problem waiting to explode. Night fell. The children slept, huddled in their blankets. Lyra sat near them, wide awake again. Jace stood watch near the entrance, holding his rifle across his lap. But something made him turn. Footsteps. Not loud. Not rushed. Measured. He raised his weapon instantly. "Don't move." But the figure wasn't Lyra. And it wasn't the bounty hunter either. It was a stranger, a young alien man, covered in robes, hands raised. "Peace," the man said in a low voice. "I followed you only to warn you." Jace narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" "I'm nobody," the man said. "But I live in these caves. I saw the hunter today. He questioned my family. When he mentioned the woman with children, I knew." "Knew what?" The man stepped closer, slow and cautious. "There are more like her. Mothers, escaped workers, children. We hide, move, survive, but they're rounding us up now. This one, this hunter, he doesn't want her caught. He wants her eliminated." Jace gripped his rifle tighter. "Why? Warn me?" Because she's not just your problem anymore. If she dies, the rest of us do too. Silence. The cave air felt heavier now. The stranger gave Jace a small data chip. Coordinates, safe place, resistance shelter. You want to help her? Get her there. If you stay here, they'll burn this place to the ground. Jace took the chip. The stranger left without another word. Back inside, Lyra stood by the wall, watching. Him. You heard? Jace said. She nodded. I didn't ask for this. I know, he replied, but I can't run forever. No, he agreed. So we stop running. She looked at him, confused. We go through them, Jace said. Get you to that shelter. Then we fight back. Lyra stared. This was not the same man who had told her just one night when they first met. This man was ready to burn the sky if it meant keeping her and the children alive. The test of fire, ID. Night was too quiet. Jace felt it in his bones as he stood near the edge of the cave, pulse heavy in his neck. Even the wind outside had stopped moving. The desert was holding its breath. Beside him, Lyra tightened the makeshift cloak around Rune, who had started coughing again. Jolly clung to her arm without saying a word. The kids knew something was wrong. They always knew. Children raised in war always sensed danger before it arrived, and tonight it was close. Jace checked the data chip again. The stranger's coordinates were real. The resistance camp was about 60 kilometers north, but to get there they'd have to leave the caves and cross a wide open patch of desert. No cover, no rocks, just sand and sky. We'll move before dawn, Jace whispered to Lyra. When the suns haven't risen yet, less heat, less risk. She nodded, but her eyes were tense. He'll strike tonight. I know. They both knew the bounty hunter wasn't hunting anymore. He was waiting for the family to panic and but Jace wasn't the same man from the beginning of the week. And tonight, he wasn't just protecting strangers. He was defending something he never thought he'd feel again. Family. An hour before dawn, the silence cracked. A loud, high-pitched hum ripped through the cave entrance, followed by a flash of blue light. A shock grenade. Not lethal, but meant to paralyze. Jace moved fast. Cover their ears, he shouted. Lyra threw her cloak over the children just as the grenade hit the floor and exploded with a blinding pulse. Even through the shield, the kids screamed. Jace dropped to one knee, ears ringing, eyes burning, but his grip never left the rifle. Shadows moved near the entrance. Boots. 1, 2, 3. Jace fired without warning. The first intruder went down instantly, chest armor shattered by a direct hit. The second ducked behind a boulder. The third threw a drone into the air. It began, scanning with a red beam, flying low toward the back of the cave, toward the kids. Jace roared and shot at midair. The explosion rained sparks down like fireworks. Back tunnel, he shouted to Lyra. Take the kids. Go! Lyra didn't argue. She scooped Rune into her arms, grabbed Jolly's hand, and sprinted toward the deeper tunnels. Another figure stepped into the entrance. Not masked, not armored. It was the bounty hunter. Black coat, smooth helmet, laser spear in hand. Tall, unbothered, cold. Give her to me, human, he said. Voice modulated, robotic. You don't need to die. Jace spat blood from his lip. I don't plan to. He fired 3 rounds, each aimed at the head. The bounty hunter spun his spear and deflected all 3 shots like they were nothing. Jace barely had time to reload before the hunter lunged. The spear cracked against the wall where Jace had just stood. Rock shattered. Jace rolled and fired again, this time low toward the legs. The hunter jumped, twisting midair, and kicked Jace in the chest. Jace slammed into the wall with a grunt. The spear hovered near his neck. I said you didn't have to die, the hunter growled. Then a sound echoed from behind. J-j-j-k. A sharp plasma buzz. The hunter turned just in time to block an energy blade coming straight for his back. Lyra. She had returned, eyes burning, blade glowing white in her hand. The hunter looked at her, surprised. You still carry that weapon? Kept it. For this day, she whispered. They fought, blade versus spear, elegant versus brutal. She moved fast, spinning low, drawing him away from Jace. The air lit up with every clash. Sparks danced like stars around them. Jace struggled to his feet, vision blurry, but heart alive. Lyra was holding her ground, but barely. The hunter was stronger. Trained. Cold. But she was fighting for more. The spear slashed her side. She cried out but didn't fall. Jace lifted his rifle. One good shot left. He waited. And when the hunter raised his spear to strike. Bang. The round hit the base of the hunter's helmet. Crack. Shatter. Sparks. He stumbled. Lyra didn't hesitate. She drove the energy blade through his chest. Silence. The bounty hunter collapsed. Lyra fell to her knees, breathing hard. Blood stained her side. Jace rushed to her. "You're hurt." "I'm alive," she gasped. "That's enough." He helped her up. The kids peeked from the tunnel, eyes wide. They had seen everything. Jace looked at Lyra, bleeding, shaking, but standing. "I thought you were just a mother," he whispered. "I was," she said. "But you gave me a reason to be more." He looked toward the north. The desert waited, and so did the next part of their journey. Building the shelter together. The desert wind was gentle this time. Not screaming like before, just whispering across the sand as the sun dipped low behind the ridge. Jace stood at the edge of the shallow canyon, looking over the dry, cracked floor. His shirt was torn, his side bruised, but he was alive. Behind him, Lyra and the children moved slowly through the rocks, carrying supplies they had salvaged from the old cave. They had escaped. They had survived. But now came the harder part. Living. He turned and pointed toward a small natural hollow inside the canyon wall. "There," he said. "We'll build it in that curve, hidden from the sky, close to water." Lyra nodded, her face pale but calm. A deep cut still marked her side, freshly stitched by Jace's trembling hands the night before. She walked slower. Now, but every step was solid. Determined. The kids, Rune and Jolly, were changing too. Rune smiled more. His laughter, soft but real, echoed off the canyon walls. Jolly stayed quiet but began shadowing Jace, watching how he handled tools, how he checked the perimeter, how he always kept one hand near his rifle. They were becoming a unit, a family, though no one dared say it out loud. By the third day, the shelter was coming to life. Jace built the frame using scrap metal and desert stone. Lyra helped lay the insulation, using old fabric and sun-dried animal skin. She moved with quiet skill, her hands steady even when her body ached. At night, they sat by the small fire. Not close, still cautious, but closer than before. Rune would crawl into Lyra's lap. Jolly would rest his head on a pile of blankets, near Jace's feet. Lyra would hum, soft, alien lullabies, and Jace would sharpen his tools in silence. But his eyes always drifted to her. One evening, after the children had fallen asleep, Jace found Lyra outside, staring at the stars. She stood, alone, arms folded, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. The light made her silver-blue skin glow faintly like moonlight on water. He stepped beside her. "You should rest," he said. "I'm tired," she whispered, "but I can't sleep." "Still afraid?" She looked up. "Always. But that's not what keeps me awake." "What then?" She paused for a long time before answering. "I don't know who I am anymore. I was a slave, then a fugitive, a mother, a fighter. Now I'm here, safe. And I don't know what to do with that." Jace nodded slowly. "You survive. You build something new. That's what we do." She looked at him. "Is that what you did?" He hesitated. The stars reflected in his eyes. "No," he admitted. "I ran. I came here to disappear. Thought I could bury my past in the sand. And now," he turned toward her fully, "now, I think I found something worth staying for." Lyra didn't speak, but her eyes softened. He stepped closer, You said you'd be a good wife, but you didn't have to prove anything. You're more than enough. Just being here. Her breath caught in her throat. I don't want to belong to anyone again, she said. Not like before. I don't want you to, he replied. I want to walk beside you, that's all. She looked down, then back up into his eyes. You're a strange human, Jace. He smiled just slightly. Yeah, I've been told. For a moment, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of something unspoken, but growing. Not lust, not pity. Love, in its first fragile form. The next day, they worked, side by side again. Jace taught Jolly how to use a scanner to track heat signatures. Lyra showed Rune how to boil cactus water without burning his fingers. They laughed when the pot tipped over and spilled all over Jace's boots. That night, the shelter had a roof, and Jace, for the first time in years, felt like he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living again. Far away in the dark control room of a Glavic cruiser orbiting Theryx 9, a screen lit up with coordinates. A voice crackled through the comms. We lost the hunter, another voice responded, deeper and colder. Then send someone worse. Back on the surface, the stars above the canyon twinkled peacefully. But war was coming again. And this time, they wouldn't run. Her real name. The desert winds had quieted, after days of blowing sandstorms like the world itself was finally taking a breath. Inside the half-finished shelter, a warm fire glowed low in the stone hearth Jace had carved himself. Sparks floated lazily into the air. Rune snored softly, curled up next to his sister Jolly, who held a ragged stuffed toy Lyra had stitched together from old fabric. Outside, the stars blanketed the sky, thousands of tiny lights watching over them. Jace sat at the entrance of the shelter, rifle across his lap as always. But tonight there was no danger in the air, just stillness, a rare peace. Lyra sat beside him, her knees pulled close to her chest, the cut on her side now scabbed and healing. They hadn't spoken for hours. Not because of tension, because there was comfort in silence now. Trust. That heavy wall between them had thinned crack by crack over days of survival, of shared food, of unspoken glances that said, I see you. But tonight, something weighed on her more than usual. Jace noticed. You've been thinking hard, he said, breaking the silence without looking at her. Lyra gave a small, sad smile. It shows? It always does. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked up at the stars. Where I come from, we don't give real names to outsiders. It's dangerous. A name is a power. If someone knows it, they can claim you. Jace turned slightly, now watching her. And the name you gave me before, he asked. She hesitated. Lyra is safe. It was a name I used in the camps to survive, but it's not mine. He didn't press, but she continued anyway. My real name is Elthena Ruvexka. Jace let the name hang in the air. Strange, beautiful, alien. That sounds important. She nodded. It was. I was born to a line of scholars, high caste. My people believed in knowledge above everything. But knowledge didn't protect us when the Glavic raided our world. They burned the libraries, took the children. I was 12. She swallowed hard. They told us we were lucky to be taken. Useful, they said. I watched my parents die trying to protect books. Not even weapons. Books. Jace stayed quiet. He had no words. Only a slow, burning anger growing in his chest. They trained us to forget, she went on. New names. New tongues, new duties. I didn't cry for years, not until Rune was born. He was so small, too small. I didn't even have a name to give him. Just numbers, tags. She wiped her cheek without letting herself cry. Then Jolly came, and I swore they'd never become what I had. So I ran. I didn't even know where I was going. Just away. She looked at him now, full on. But that night, when you opened your shelter door and let us in, it was the first time I felt like a person again. Not a prisoner, not a ghost. Jace leaned forward. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For everything. That you had to live like that. That no one came for you. Her voice cracked just a little. You did. Those two words hit him harder than he expected. He reached out and gently took her hand. She didn't pull away. You still feel like you're being hunted? He asked. She nodded. Not by them. By the past. I wake up, expecting chains. Then we'll keep building, he said, until the past can't find us anymore. She smiled, this time not forced, not faint, a real smile. Why are you doing this, Jace? She asked, her voice soft. Why risk everything for me and my children? He looked at her, and for the first time he didn't dodge the truth. Because I was waiting for something to give me a reason to stay alive, and now I've found it. The moment stretched, full of unspoken things. Then she leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. Not a kiss. Not yet. But something deeper. An understanding. A promise. Inside the shelter, Rune stirred in his sleep. Jolly pulled the blanket, tighter over him, and outside 2 broken souls held on to each other, not because they were weak, but because they were finally strong enough to be seen. Family reborn. The warning came in the form of silence. No wind, no stars, just the heavy stillness before a storm that even the planet seemed to fear. Jace stood on the canyon ridge, his eyes locked onto the thin black line crawling across the horizon. Dust, trails fast and sharp. Military vehicles, 3, maybe 4. High-speed Glavic raiders. No trade flags, no lights. That meant one thing. Kill squad. He turned to the shelter behind him. His shelter now. Their shelter. Elthina. He called her real name without hesitation. It's time. She stepped out holding Rune in one arm, Jolly at her side. No panic, just quiet resolve in her face. The children didn't cry. They'd lived through enough to understand what this meant. They'd found them. And this time, running wasn't an option. Inside the shelter, Jace laid out the weapons. Not much. A pulse rifle, 2 thermal charges, and 1 EMP grenade he'd been saving for years. Not enough to win, but enough to send a message. He looked at Elthina. You take the kids, head through the canyon split. That path leads to the resistance camp. I'll hold them off long enough. No, she said sharply. We stay together. You stay alive, he replied. That's how we win. She stepped closer, eyes burning. I didn't survive. All this just to bury another man I love. The words hit him like a jolt. He stared. She stared back. No shame, no hesitation. I love you, she said again, quieter this time. If we die today, I want that truth to live somewhere. Jace swallowed the knot in his throat. He leaned in, pressing his forehead gently against hers like they did in silence that night under the stars. Then let's make it mean something, he whispered. The Glavic trucks arrived with mechanical fury, tires screeching, armor gleaming in the rising suns. The first squad entered the canyon fully armed. Motion trackers, body heat sensors, high-frequency drones. But Jace had planned for this. As they moved in, the lead truck passed a series of rocks, harmless, unassuming, until the EMP charge detonated with a high-pitched screech. The truck shut down instantly, lights blinking out. The troops stumbled, blinded and confused, and that's when Jace opened fire. 1 shot, 2, 3. Fast, surgical. Elthina, blade in hand, moved like wind behind him, cutting through the flank guards like the warrior she had once been forced to forget. It was chaos. But it was their chaos. They fought as one. They weren't survivors anymore. They were protectors. But numbers always catch up. A second wave pushed forward. A bullet clipped Jace's arm. He grunted, dropped behind a rock. Elthina screamed something in her native tongue, charging forward with reckless fire. She was cornered. Blades against guns. And just before a trooper fired, Jaylee appeared. The child threw a flare. Blinding. Red light exploding in the trooper's face. He missed. Elthina struck. The soldier went down, Jace stared in shock. You taught us, Jally said, panting, to protect each other. He smiled through the pain. Damn right I did. But it couldn't last forever. More soldiers came, too many. Jace was bleeding, Elthina was limping, the children were exhausted, and then, a distant howl echoed through the canyon, then another, then lights, dozens of them. From the other side of the cliffs, shadows appeared, fast, armed, angry. The resistance had come. The young alien man who gave them the chip stood at the front, shouting orders. Fighters swarmed the Glavic squads like a tidal wave. Blaster fire lit up the canyon like lightning in the dark. And just like that, the attackers broke. They weren't prepared for a real fight. They fled. Later, when the smoke cleared and the dead were counted, Jace sat beside Elthina on the cliff. Her hand was in his, bloody, bruised, but warm. The children slept beside them, wrapped in cloaks under the stars. Is it over? She asked. No, he said softly. But it's beginning. She tilted her head. What is? A life, he said, our life. A week later, the resistance camp welcomed them not as refugees but as heroes. Jace helped build the outer defenses. Jolly began training with the scouts. Rune started laughing again, chasing lizard bugs in the gardens. And Elthina, she no longer hid her name. She wore it like armor, like freedom. One night, Jace stood in the doorway of their new home. She came up beside him, placing a hand on his chest. You still want to do this alone? She asked. He smiled. I was never doing it alone. I just didn't know it. Then she kissed him, not desperate, not tragic, but full of life, full of love. They weren't broken people anymore. They were whole. They were family. And they were ready for whatever came next.